Do you have all these talking heads on YouTube or Instagram or whatever telling you how smart they are because they read more books than you and they show you their stack of books that they're reading and how cool they are and their library and their Lambos? And you just get pissed off because you sit down to read a book and then you get bored after 5 minutes and watch TV or something like that. Well, you're in luck because today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to read. This is the Existential Stoic podcast. I'm Randy. That's Danny. What's going on, Danny?
What's up, Randy?
Can you tell him a little bit better?
Yeah, a little bit better. A little better.
I
A little bit better. Yeah.
just, I
That's all
think
right.
I think it's kind of ridiculous because reading is very important. Like my grandfather when I was young, he always read and he always drilled it into my head that like reading was important. And I hated reading because the only thing that I had to read was what I was assigned to read for school, like Scarlet Letter and
Oh
Canterbury
yeah.
Tales and like terrible stuff that no child should have to read. But uh
Boring stuff mostly. Yeah.
yeah, but like nowadays, all these people are virtue signaling all over social media that like they're so woke because they read all these books and look at how smart they are and yada yada yada. And it's hard because especially for someone who doesn't read, it's hard to get started reading.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny too that people it cracks me up that people like show off with it as like I don't know, it just cracks me up because like I don't know, I read a ton my whole life. And yeah, I have a lot of books and stuff, but I mean I've actually gotten rid of a ton of them because it's just hard to move. And I already read, you know what I mean? Or I give them away. Because a lot of times, especially like fun stuff like sci-fi and stuff, like I always pass them along after I read them because I want other people to enjoy them too. So yeah, it is funny. That's a weird trend though, happening with
Mhm.
this, like with this like reading and like all the self-help and stuff. I don't know. Anyway,
So so I actually remember back, I don't know when it was, but it was sometime in my teens when like I made up my mind that I'm going to start reading. And And until then, like anytime that I would try and read, I would fall asleep. Or it was just like it was hard to stick with. I would be trying to read these books that I just didn't like, and like that was very painful. So then I remember exactly when it happened, when I was just like I got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm only going to read books that I enjoy. If I don't like it, I'm
yeah.
not going to read it.
Yeah, I mean
And
that's a good
then
rule of thumb.
yeah, and then I was just like, well, I'm just gonna keep at this reading thing for like a few weeks, a month. And there is this hurdle. It's probably like 5 days long or like a week long, where reading seems like a chore, an absolute task.
Well,
And then
if you
after
haven't
that, it becomes
done
pleasurable.
Yeah, if you haven't done it in a while, like it's gonna make you tired. It's gonna be different because it's different. It's a different experience than like watching TV or playing video games or scrolling through social media because it's I guess in a way similarly passive, but it's also active because you have to imagine and you have to kind of let yourself get into it. And then that does take time if you haven't done it to get to that point and to not. I mean, I still fall asleep when I read a bunch of times because I am
Mhm.
tired, but I also like reading. And I also like reading before I fall asleep. So I tend to fall asleep when I read, but it's not a big deal, except that like I always like end up when I fall asleep on my because I'll read on my phone a lot with Kindle and I like fall asleep and then like hit it and then like it just scrolls to like the like some random place in the book. I'm like, ah man.
Nice, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
Well,
pain.
like the difference between reading and doing something else like scrolling through TikTok or watching TV is the level of stimulation is way lower. So it's super easy to fall asleep while you're reading. And this is something that I actually tell people when they say, "Oh no, I tried reading, but I always fall asleep." And then I'm like, "Well, how's your sleeping?" They're like, "Oh, I have such a hard time falling asleep. I'm scrolling TikTok all night." I'm like, "Okay." So like you're having a difficult time falling asleep, but every time you read, you fall asleep. So why don't you just read when it's bedtime? And they're like, "Huh?" Yeah, you're like
My
guaranteed to fall asleep. Yeah, it'll solve
I
both
do
your
read a lot
problems.
at night. My problem is now though is that like especially if I because there's a lot of books I really enjoy, especially like stories, when you want to get
Mhm.
to the next part, they'll actually keep me awake. And that can be
Mhm.
bad too, because I'll stay up really late. So just another chapter. Just one
I
more
know,
chapter,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but
But
I think
I think
you're
that's a good place to be though, because I enjoy getting there at night because I read
yeah.
before I go to sleep as well, but they're always like science fiction or fantasy. And it's a great spot to be when like you can barely keep your eyes open, but you're like, come on, I want to keep reading.
Yeah.
And then eventually you just put the book down, you're out.
It's nice. Yeah, you sleep really well too. But I think
Mhm.
you hit on it, like where I think it takes time. You have to kind of give yourself a chance to get into it and to kind of adjust to it is a different activity than other stuff that we usually do. So it does take a different kind of training, I guess you could say, or like, just habituation maybe or something.
Hmm.
But I think you also said something really good, which is you don't enjoy something, don't bother with it. I think people make this mistake all the time because other people will suggest books, you gotta read it or something, but maybe it's not for them. Like I really like sci-fi fantasy stuff, but and fantasy a certain like subgenres of it, but most other stuff like in the fun reading, like I don't really enjoy. So I just stick with that because that's what I really like. And then I think also recognizing the difference between like entertaining reads versus like maybe more like you're gonna learn something. You learn from every book because you get like human experience, all that stuff. But I think like, if you're gonna read philosophy, if you're gonna read like science books or like programming books or even self-help books in some cases that require a bit more like critical thinking and stuff, recognizing that that's probably going to be a little difficult and doing that when you're more awake, maybe in the morning or something, would be better at first because it's going to take more time. And also realizing that you're going to go slow with certain stuff at first. Like I know like
Hmm.
a lot of people complain, especially my students are so philosophy because like it's so I'm like, hey, you have to take it slow. Like you can't read it fast. You can't expect to sit down and read all 30 pages I assigned and understand any of it. You might need to read 2 pages and take a break and think about it. And that's totally okay. But I think people, we get so hard on ourselves, like we're not doing it right, or I'm just not good at this, or whatever. It's just not for me because you're not instantly good at it. And that's just a ridiculous position to be in.
Yeah, I like your point there about being patient with it because it is slower. Like I'm in the habit of watching everything on double speed and listening to everything on double speed. So when I actually sit down with
Yeah.
a book, it's significantly slower. And that can definitely make a difference.
Well, and too,
But
like, well, look at a movie, or if they make a movie based on a book, well, a movie's visual. So, like, any kind of descriptive stuff, they can just show you. They can cover it really quick. But a book's gotta, that's gotta all be spelled out in words. So it is gonna move slower. But I also think it can also be, I don't know, more entertaining because you get to imagine it and kind of imagine it how you want rather than relying on somebody else to portray it for you.
yeah. Another thing that I like was when you were talking about choosing books that you like. And this was a mistake that I used to make all the time. So this was back when people actually went to bookstores, but I would go to a
Yeah, right?
bookstore. I know, right? And so I would go to a bookstore and I would find a book with an attractive title and or cover. And I would buy the book
So
and then
Fabio,
take
like on his horse.
exactly.
Win. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I would take that home and then I would start reading it and it would be terrible and I would struggle through it and I would force myself and then I would just give up and I'd be like this reading thing isn't for me. And it took a while to figure out that like okay, I need to actually read the book first. Like generally before I buy a book now, I'll read the first chapter and I'll
Yeah.
see is this something that pulls me in? Is this something that I enjoy? Does the author write in a style that I like? Because otherwise I'm just going to waste my time and my money.
That is one of the best things now about things like Kindle is you can get a sample. They'll let you get read 10% of the book for free without without anything to try it out. And I like that because it's a great way to try new stuff and see if you like it. If a book doesn't grab you, really, if a book doesn't grab you really relatively quickly within the first, I would argue, few pages,
Hmm.
maybe chapter at the most, it's probably not for you
Hmm.
because it's probably for other people, basically, right? It's not hooking you in, it's not grabbing your attention. Maybe the writing style is not working for you. But there's lots of reasons why you might not like it. So I think, yeah, not forcing yourself to read. It's funny. I don't know why, but I never did that. If I didn't like something, I just didn't read it. Even when I was younger in school, I just ignored it and read other stuff. I would read adjacent things that were like similar, I
Hmm.
guess. But yeah, I don't know. I can't do it. If I don't like it, I just don't. I'm not-
Okay, so here's another thing about what you just said, reading adjacent things. So I noticed recently I've been struggling a little bit with reading. And it's kind of like I have a whole bunch of stuff going on. There's not much spare time. And like I I feel like I should be reading because it needs, whatever, all these reasons. I'm shooting all over myself. But anyways, uh but I've been struggling and I found something that actually helped me out a little bit because I was reading this one book and I read it for probably like 15 minutes and then it just got really, really hard and like sticky. It was just hard to continue going in that book. So I just put down that book and picked up another book, and then it was just like flew right through it. So sometimes reading multiple things at once can be helpful because if you get stuck with one thing, you just go on to the next one.
Yeah. I think philosophy actually helped me a lot too because like I got used to reading these really like convoluted and many times unnecessarily complicated and hard works that you have to like have dictionaries out and like you're taking notes and trying to compare things, figure out. And so like it kind of sets you up to a level of difficulty where like the other stuff just I don't know, it's not that hard
Hmm.
and it's easier to read. But I think that's the other thing is like people don't realize that when you read, your, your comprehension increases dramatically. So your ability to comprehend like what people are saying, what's written down goes way up. Your vocabulary expands, your critical thinking gets better. Depending on what you read, but I would argue most things you get a broader range of human experience because you get to see things from other people's perspectives. Think of like not just characters in like, fiction books, but also like biographies and stuff. You can see the world through somebody else's eyes, which gives you wholly different like kind of experience in a sense of life. I mean, there's so many benefits to it. It's amazing. So it is worth
Hmm.
doing. And I think, we see so often now too with people like we saw it with the elections and stuff. I'll just use that as an example. People share all these articles and like stuff like that, and they don't even read them. They just read the headline. They have no idea what it's about. And I think if you start reading more and start reading this stuff, you can also see like that a lot of the stuff that's being shared around is crap and like false and doesn't have any real evidential support or anything. So I think that's also a good point of reading is you become more informed in your choices and in your interactions with the world.
Hmm. Yeah, so that was good. Remember when we did that episode about the top books we read in a year?
Hmm.
Yeah, we should
Yeah.
do another one of those.
What are you reading this year?
All cybersecurity.
Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
Dude.
Whole bunch of really good books, but I just really just one thing.
Oh, so I'm reading this Neil Stevenson book now. You
Uh-huh.
got me into him.
Oh, the
And I re
Quicksilver series,
Yeah,
yeah?
well, okay, yeah. So I really like him, right? And so I picked up the first book was called Quicksilver. It was like 300 pages. Great, really good. And then I went to go get the next one, but then I saw he had like it was like a 3 book set on Amazon for all of them. I was like, okay. So I started reading it. I'm like, this is taking me forever. Like forever. I was like, why is this so long? The first book was like 390 pages. So I figured the whole all three would be like what, 1200? Okay, turns out within that series, I guess he released a bunch of like novellas and whatever, and it includes all of them. So it's
Uh-huh.
like, I don't know, 12 times longer than the first book. That like the I was like, because I just for a while I was like, am I like not making progress? Like, what's going on? It's really weird. But it's
Uh-huh.
very good. So
He
I'm
has
doing
he
that.
has a gift for writing
I like his
and
writing
at length.
style. Yeah. Yeah. He's
Yeah.
very good at he's very good at describing things clearly, but not there is that like point of overboard where I get
Yeah.
annoyed, and he doesn't cross that or doesn't seem
Yeah, I
to,
love all the research that he puts into stuff because
Yeah.
it definitely like piques your interest when you're reading it.
Well, that's the other thing I think people like. I like hard science fiction too sometimes because like the science in it is interesting. And like they'll do like, what's within the bounds of science, but then kind of extend it, which is cool. I like that. I always enjoy it.
Hmm.
But you can learn so much. I think it's a shame that people don't read more.
Yeah. Well, what are you gonna do? The other things that I've been reading for fun that are not cybersecurity related is the Expanse series. I think I'm on book 6 right now.
Oh,
Really
nice.
good.
It's a good
But I
series.
can't
Yeah.
wait for like this the Free Navy and the Belter Descent. I can't wait for that to end.
Mm,
But
yeah.
and then what else? There's the books by Joe Abercrombie. I forget the name of them, which are really good. And then there's also a couple other books that I read recently. One was called Guns and Almond Milk. That was a good one. And then also Sweet Bean Paste. They're just
Nice.
like nice novels, but they're very, very interesting.
What I do? Oh, before the I reread most of the Discworld series too before I got back into
Mhm.
Neil Stevenson. But they're like super light reads. I mean, I can knock out like a whole one in a day. They're like really easy, but
Mhm.
they're funny and fun. So, but I think that's the other
Yeah.
thing. Like, yeah, finding stuff that's like light and fun first is a good way to get into it because it's just enjoyable.
Yeah, I
And
like going back and reading the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy that are
the
light
good
and
one too.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if anybody still, I mean, the other good thing about reading too, I think people forget is like you can really become so knowledgeable in a subject just by reading books in that subject that are new because you read the best stuff coming out and like the most, like kind of almost like a what do you call it? Like to combine cumulative knowledge in a nutshell sort of thing, right?
Hmm.
All at once. It's nice.
Yeah, I heard one of these motivational people say that if you read I think it was probably Les Brown or something, but if you read one book in a particular subject area per month, in 5 years you'll be one of the top most knowledgeable people in the world.
Probably, yeah,
Which is 60
because
books. You read 60 books on your topic, top most
yeah,
knowledgeable people in the world. Pretty cool
which
though.
totally makes sense though too, because you're letting all those other people do all the hard stuff like researching and figuring
And
it out,
writing
and
the books.
you're just consuming it. Yeah, it's
Have
awesome.
you have you ever wanted to write a book? I've noticed there's like a big push. Everybody wants to write a book nowadays. Have you ever
I
wanted to write a book?
I know I've thought about it. And it's something I've always kind of in the back of my head wanted to do because I do write a lot, like in journals. I do write a lot of creative stuff, but I just never. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe one day. It's like one of those things that's on
I
the back
started
burner.
actually writing or ripping up my writing.
Really?
As yeah, so like I heard it as a good way to do expressive writing is just to write about your feelings and your thoughts and then just rip it up. So I started doing that and it's been pretty good.
Oh,
Cathartic.
I do that, and then I just throw all the journals in a box somewhere and I forget about them. It's a
Yeah,
similar practice.
I know exactly. And then set the box on fire. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I've literally started writing things before, but I don't know. It's one of those things where like it takes a lot of time, and I feel like so it's something I need to like be able to concentrate on. And right now I can't. So it is what
Yeah,
it is.
definitely.
Um,
I know we're pretty busy now.
yeah, yeah, but yeah, I think I wish more people read. I think they should. It's a shame.
Well, to each their own. Some people it's more important to just yeah, I think in the world there are some people who are do different stuff. Some
Well,
people
it's all
TikTok and Instagram is much more attractive and it'll always be that way.
there is also a thing. I know people do learn differently. Some people learn a lot better visually. So in that sense, like yeah, watching a video, something like that is going to be way more engaging for them than reading. But I think, even so, I still think reading is good. And like, building that comprehension. Do you take notes and stuff when you read? And I'm not like
Never.
science fiction and stuff.
I have
No.
the hardest time taking notes. Like I've always been a learner where like I will remember not everything. Like I don't have a photographic memory, but like I'll remember all of the important stuff. And like when I went to vet
Yeah.
school, even though I studied for the test, like literally I would just remember the stuff from the class. And on the exam, I would remember the teacher saying like stressing this thing. And I would be like, of course
Yeah.
that's important. So studying for that. But like I struggle right now with taking notes because I have to do that for what I'm doing, and I struggle with that.
Yeah, I never take notes in the sense of like where people think of taking notes is like basically transcribing. I don't do that. But I always just like anything that when I'm reading stuff that's more I guess like geared towards like learning like philosophy or science or something. I'll just anything that interests me, like really interests me, I'll jot
Mhm.
down stuff about it because then it just yeah, it's a good way to kind of recall it later, I
That's it.
guess.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's a good point. I like on the Kindle how you can highlight stuff and then you can look back at it. But I
Yeah.
never look back at it.
It's a good feature if you ever go back to it, ever in
Yeah,
your
I
life.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
So, anything else on how to read? I guess that's all.
take
Yeah.
your time
All right.
and just do it. Yeah.
Yeah, just do it. Nike.
Mm.
Anyways, if you enjoyed this episode, well, go out and find a book and start reading. And if uh if you liked the episode, like, share, subscribe, watch us on YouTube, anywhere you get your podcast, you can listen. And this is the